First of all, auditing is a subject which actually requires a lot of efforts from your side. This is not just a theory subject which can be like you read it once and you write it in your own ways. No. This is a very precise subject. And we need to understand the words, the terminologies which are written. It's not like a normal theory. There are few words, there are few lines which are there. And if you don't write that words, the meaning of that sentence totally changes. And as of today, the problem which student faces is, majority of the time, I'm not telling just 5-10%, more than 50% of the questions, students are not able to identify only. I'm telling you, more than 50% of questions, students are not able to identify. Like, what was the question? They know about that essay generally. They know about that standard, auditing standard generally, but the question is very precise. The answer also needs to be precise. You can't write very generally, otherwise the problem will happen. And this is a subject wherein you can really score a lot of marks as well. I've seen students scoring above 80 also. But the thing is, there are students who are facing lots of difficulties over here. There are students coming up with 30, 35 marks and then they ask me, sir, ICAI has not given me marks. It's really not there. Like 10, 15 days back, one of the students of CA final, he got his evaluated answer sheet and he sent it to me. You won't believe, 70% of the questions he had recognized wrongly. He did not identify, oh, this was a question. And in your new syllabus, they're not asking a direct one-liner question. No, it's not one-liner question. The question will be of a half a page kind of thing. And after of that big story, last 1 or 2 lines will be the most crucial one. In our material, I've tried to cover almost whatever is basically given in ICAI book, plus all your latest RTPs, including this November attempt RTP is also covered. All the basically examination papers till your May 19 are already covered. So actually our book is kind of self-sufficient, but this book has to be thoroughly revised twice or thrice. You can't just read it once. First time when you're reading any of the theory subject, I will tell you, you don't try to remember anything in first reading. First reading is never for remembering. First reading is only for understanding the things, sorting out what needs to be remembered. See, this is just part 1. Yeah, this is just part 1. Don't expect 200, 300, 400 page book. No. See, you are in CA final, you are not in intermediate. And ICAI has given around 2000 pages. I have summed up basically in around 700 pages or 650 pages. Like this book is 400 pages. Another book you'll get is of 300 pages. So 700 pages of material is there. But in this 700 pages, 400 pages are kind of question answers only. Like in our chapter of company audit, we have more than 100 questions. When we go to chapter of professional ethics, again more than 100 questions. Auditing standard, more than 200 questions are there. Now, you don't have to revise question answers again and again. Question answers are mostly based on what? Text. But few question answers will be such which are a bit different and wherein some 2-3 things are kind of applicable together. Such question answers need to be revised. The text, which is of around 350 pages, half is text, half is kind of question answers. The text needs to be revised twice or 3 times. And you're basically the question answers which are there, you have read it once. Out of that, mark out which you felt were a bit difficult and which you feel that, okay, I need to read it again to answer it. And such kind of question answers, almost 20-30% question answer. Remaining 50-70% will be easy. But 30% question answers are such which you need to again revise it. And first time when you're reading it, please mark out the things very properly. You can't read a summary, someone gives you a 50 or 100 pages. That is never sufficient in order to pass out in the subject. I will not give a single dictation in the subject, but I will be marking out the things which I feel are important, and you should basically constantly be active. Most important thing in theory subject is you need to be active. I'm not telling me. You need to be active. Constantly, you also should mark out the things so that you know, okay, these are the things I need to revise later on. So we will kind of underline or we will mark out kind of 40 to 50% of the things. So half of the book, imagine you had a theory of around 400 pages, 300 pages question answer. Out of 400, we'll mark out and we'll kind of make it as 200 pages. And that 200 pages you need to read 2-3 times before your examination so that you are crystal clear about the terminologies and the wordings which has been used. The most problematic thing is identifying the words and terminologies and understanding which question has been asked. We have given lots and lots of questions to ensure that you are able to identify the right questions. Clear with this? Okay, make sure you are constantly active. You are also marking the things which are required. Don't sit in class without your book and without a pen or pencil in your hand. Pen, pencil and a book are must. Without that, you can't sit in auditing subject. So, I hope all of you are having the books today. Okay, and another thing is, as a student, we take theory subjects very lightly. And we most of the time try to do it at the end only. That is again one of the problematic things. Actually, theory needs more revision than practicals. If I am reading any theory subject, I need to revise twice before examination. I can't read once and directly go in examination. As that revision doesn't happen because we are doing very late. In case any of you are having examination in next May or basically November, still try to ensure that whatever things we do in class, we would have highlighted the things. Go home and read the highlighted things once. Go home and just read highlighted things once. See, we'll be doing maximum is 15-20 pages a day. Maximum. Because we have basically 40 days or 38 days of class and we have 700 pages. So 15 to 20 pages in a day we have to do. Out of that also major will be question answers. So hardly 10 pages theory we are doing. 10 pages we have marked out also half. So you have to read only 5 pages. And I request that 5 pages a day you just go and read once. So together with the class only you are done with kind of first reading. Together with the class only you are done with kind of first reading, and try to revise whatever 200, 300 pages which we have marked twice before examination by giving 4 days. 4 days you give it, again 4 days you give it, then that subject will be kind of really great. But if you ignore it, you keep it at the end, rest assured you won't be able to identify the questions properly. And don't try to miss any of the classes. I know articleship is important, but this is equally important. And I tell you, your best of your articleship, wherever you are done, that will be of no use unless you clear your examination. If you clear your examination, then the tag, oh, I've done an articleship here or there, that will matter. But otherwise, what you did in your articleship, nothing will matter unless you have cracked the examination. And this all things are not that we learn regularly in our articleship. Few things come, few things don't come. I know many of the chartered accountant, they practice only on income tax side. So they have done about tax audit as much. But again, other things, so many other chapters are there, so many other theories are there, which are not being covered. And standards on auditing specifically. Now, for your attempt onwards, actually, June, July, they came up with an announcement. Few of the standards have been eliminated from the syllabus. Now, I tell you, compared to last batch, 3 or 3.5 lectures have been kind of removed. But whenever I'll do this again now, it will not take that 3.5 days less. It will take kind of similar time only because we'll be going in much more detail, and I'll try to ensure that we keep 3 tests. During this period of 35 days, we'll be having 3 tests. Okay, so just make sure you are constantly active, marking out the things. Number 2, you're not remaining absent. I don't want a single absentism. The day when you're absent in class should be the day when you're also absent in your articleship. Yeah, if you're not absent over there, you should not be absent over here. Both are equally important. Okay, now this part 1. This part 1 carries a weightage of approximately around 60 to 65 marks. So 60 to 65 marks is this book. Next book which I'll give you will have a weightage of around 30-35 marks. Now in your syllabus you have 30 marks of objectives. Your MCQs are asked for 30 marks. In the second book there will be specifically 100 pages only for the objectives. Now they ask only MCQs, but I'll be giving you not only MCQs, but I also prefer fill in the blanks. Fill in the blanks is basically whether you are able to recall or not. I don't want to give you options. Without options also, you should be able to answer fill in the blanks. So first few pages, like around 15-20 pages, there will be fill in the blanks for each of the chapters covered. After that, there will be MCQs of around 50-70 pages, and some true-false also will be given to you. So there will be 100 page purely for objectives I'm again telling you, our book is self-sufficient. You don't have to do anything else. But you can't find a smaller book and start reading smaller book. This will not be sufficient. You have to read this thing. This is actually what is required in auditing. You can't cut short more than this. Okay, now, if we just check the index. If you just check the index, I tell you the weightage of the chapters which we'll cover in this book. We'll start with actually your chapter number 5. I've given a preface on the first page, like how we'll be going. We'll be starting with basically your company audit chapter, which has a weightage of approximately 15 to 20 marks. So chapter number 5 together with schedule 3. Chapter number 5 together with schedule 3 is 15 to 20 marks. Chapter number 5 together with schedule 3 is 15 to 20 marks. If you go down, last chapter, professional ethics. Last chapter, professional ethics. This is around 12 to 15 marks. Sometimes 3 questions, sometimes 4 questions, or 4 marks each. So they will ask 4 marker. Now the questions are not 8 markers. If you see this time exam pattern, basically after that MCQ is coming, they've asked all questions of 4 mark, 5 mark, 4 mark, 5 mark, 4 mark, 5 mark. None of the question is of 6, 7, 8 marks, no. And as the questions are only of 4, 5 mark, they are putting it very precise. So there's a question wherein some 4 points are there, they've asked it for 4 marks. They want only that 4 points. If that 4 points are present, you get the marks. Any of the point, and point-wise marking is there. 1 point is there, okay, you get 1 mark. Again, 1 point is there, you get 1 mark. So make sure you're not writing the stories of here and there. You have to be precise in your answer. So company audit, 15 to 20 marks. Professional ethics is 12 to 15 marks. And your chapter number 1, auditing standards. Now this chapter number 1 also includes few other chapters. Chapter number 1 also includes few other chapters. So this is approximately 35 marks. Now, if you see chapter number 2, chapter 1 they've given auditing standards, statements and guidance note. If you see chapter 2 is audit planning. Okay, anyone remember any essay related to planning? Essay 300. So this is basically your essay 300. Your chapter number 2 is nothing but essay 300. You will not have a separate chapter. When I go to that chapter number 2, there will be only one line written. The content of this chapter are given together with essay 300. Same way, risk assessment and internal control. Any essay relating to identifying the risky area? 315. Okay, so chapter number 3 is SA 315. Again, content of this chapter will be given together with 315. If you go down, chapter number 6, audit report, 700, the full 700 series. The full 700 series. So this is covered in your 700 series. So chapter 1 is the main chapter, wherein chapter number 2, chapter number 3, chapter number 6. These 3 chapters will be clubbed with your chapter number 1. So main 3 chapters in this book: company audit 15 to 20 marks, professional ethics 12 to 16 marks, and your auditing standard is 35 to 40 marks. And all other chapters will be doing in your part number 2. Clear with this? Okay, the sequence: first company audit, then professional ethics, then your standards, and then we'll go to remaining chapters. Okay, starting with company audit. Okay, anyone who did not study with me in intermediate? Oh, many. Okay, I'm Niket. I cleared my chartered accountancy in November 2008. And since then, I'm teaching all you lovely students. So it's around 10 years I'm teaching. I started at Ahmedabad. Then I was coming as visiting faculty to Bangalore Yashri Academy since 2011. And 2014 to 19, 5 years time, I was basically in Bangalore. Now, 3 months back, I actually shifted back to Gujarat, my hometown. And currently, I'm more focusing on kind of online coaching. And that's the reason I have actually shifted over there. I used to teach in E10, which was kind of center-based learning, where we used to teach from a studio, and all across India the centers were connected to it. But nowadays, you know it, people are not going to the centers, people are preferring pen drive or that model. So that is the model which is actually being worked out. So that's about me, almost 10 years experience, and I did my articleship in Deloitte. So I had a very good time during my articleship. Most of the big companies of Gujarat, I was involved in auditing, and mostly in specialized areas like consolidation, IPO related work. That type of works I've done more. Like we had a company which had kind of 16 subsidiaries. Out of 16, 11 were foreign subsidiaries, and that all consolidation work and that all was mostly handled by me over there. So that was kind of specialized areas mein my articleship was more there. Okay, we start. Coming to this chapter, company audit. Now, you already had this chapter in your intermediate. Final again it's there. And many things are basically common, but a bit more in detail. Like when we go to Caro, so there will be a lot of detailed questions which will be there. And plus, yeah, we did something in intermediate. We definitely don't remember everything as of now. But this can be a kind of brush up. Plus, schedule 3 will be more in detailed in final. In your intermediate, schedule 3 was basically having a format which used to start with asset side or liability side. Balance sheet format starts with what? Equity and liabilities and then assets, or assets and then equity and liability? Equity and liabilities and then asset. That's actually division 1 of schedule 3. Earlier they didn't have many divisions, but with Ind AS coming, now in your schedule 3 there are actually 3 formats. 3 balance sheet formats, 3 P&L formats. Division 1 of schedule 3 is applicable for those companies following AS. Division 2 of schedule 3 is for those companies following Ind AS. And division 3 of schedule 3 is for NBFCs, non-banking finance companies, which are following Ind AS. So in your intermediate schedule 3, you had learned only the division 1. Now you'll be learning division 2 as well. Division 3 still is not there in your syllabus. Division 3, ICI has not put it in your syllabus. Now, our material is based on the latest ICI material which has been issued basically in the month of July. July 2019 and August 2019, ICAI has revised the material, and this material is based on updated ones. So all updated material, all RTPs, all your basically your examination papers are covered in this book. Okay, now company audit chapter, we are learning some provisions related to audit under Companies Act. Some provisions related to what? Audit under Companies Act. Now audit is not only under Companies Act, audit comes under various acts like income tax. When your turnover exceeds 1 crore, 2 crore, 1 crore, 2 crore. 1 crore, yeah. When turnover exceeds 1 crore, you have an audit as per your Income Tax Act. That is called as a tax audit. That is called as a tax audit. Now, many people get confused about that 1 crore, 2 crore, because now for that presumptive income, 44AD, if I want to go in presumptive income 44AD, I can go up to a turnover of 2 crore. For presumptive income wala, the turnover is up to 2 crores, but normal audit ke liye, the turnover is 1 crore. Okay, if my turnover exceeds 1 crore, I have an audit applicable under my Income Tax Act. Same way under GST laws also there is audit. Same way under GST laws also there is audit, and same way we have audit under your Companies Act. This chapter is basically an audit as per your Companies Act. Now question. There's a company having a turnover of 2 crores. There's a company having a turnover of 2 crores. Would they have audit as per Companies Act only, or also audit as per Income Tax Act? Both? Or one audit common only? Audit as per Companies Act and audit as per Income Tax Act, or only one common audit? Both. The reason is reporting requirements are different. When you go to audit as per your income tax, the reporting requirement is purely different. When you go to audit as per your GST laws, again the reporting requirement is different. And when you go to audit as per your Companies Act, the reporting requirements are different. If you meet the criteria, turnover exceeding 1 crore, you have a tax audit also. You have a audit as per your Companies Act, that is your company audit. We call this as company audit. This is required as per your Companies Act. Okay, what is the limit over here? Turnover exceeding how much? For company audit? No limit. All companies have to mandatorily get the books audited as per your Companies Act. All companies, private, public, everything, OPC also. All companies have to get the books audited mandatorily. So this is basically your audit as per Companies Act, not Income Tax Act. And this is mandatory for all companies irrespective of turnover. This is audit as per Companies Act, not Income Tax Act, and this is mandatory for all companies. No need to have a notebook. Better is you write down in your book only. Try to highlight the things. Try to write down whatever I'm writing. Okay, now few of the sections related to Companies Act. Few of the sections related to Companies Act we'll be learning. Now Chapter 9 and Chapter 10 of Companies Act. Chapter 9 and Chapter 10 of Companies Act we are required to learn. Chapter 10 of Companies Act relates to audit and auditors. Chapter 10 of Companies Act relates to what? Audit and auditors. Well, Chapter 9 of Companies Act. Chapter 9 of Companies Act relates to books of accounts or accounts of company. Now, Chapter 10 is related to, this is Chapter 10, it relates to what? Audit and auditors, and it covers Section 139 to Section 148. Section 139 to Section 148, Chapter 10 of Companies Act. And Chapter 9 of Companies Act is Section 128 to 138. So 128 to 38 is accounts, 139 to 148 relates to audit. Shall I move it? Okay, now just 1 minute. Okay, so we are first starting provisions related to audit, then we'll go to the provisions related to accounts. So Section 139 to Section 148, this is what we are starting. Today we'll be doing basically first Section 141, which is on qualifications and disqualifications of auditor, and then we'll just start with Section 139 if time permits. Okay, coming to first of all qualification, disqualification, which is given under your Section 141. Now there are 4 subsections over here. Qualifications are given under Section 141, subsection 1 and 2. And disqualifications are given under 141, subsection 3 and 4. Coming to first of all qualification. Who is qualified to become an auditor of a company as per your Companies Act? Now, it's not like anybody can become an auditor or all CAs can become auditor. No, there are some qualifications and disqualifications they have put. Now, qualifications are different, disqualifications are different. Don't try to take it as same way. Qualification is general, disqualification can be case to case. Now, who is qualified to become an auditor of a company? They say chartered accountant within the meaning of Chartered Accountants Act 1949. They don't use the word chartered accountant holding COP. No. They don't use the word chartered accountant holding COP. What do they use the word? Chartered accountant within the meaning of what? Chartered Accountant Act 1949. So who is qualified? It's a chartered accountant within the meaning of Chartered Accountants Act 1949. And your Chartered Accountant Act 1949, Chartered Accountant Act 1949 will do some provisions of Chartered Accountant Act 1949 when we do the chapter of professional ethics. Professional ethics is nothing but some provisions of CA Act. Professional ethics is nothing but some provisions of what? CA Act. So as per Chartered Accountants Act 1949, if you want to become an auditor, you need to hold a COP. Now, anywhere under Companies Act, if they use the word chartered accountant, anywhere under Companies Act, if they use word chartered accountant, it is within the meaning of Chartered Accountants Act 1949. And Chartered Accountants Act 1949 says to become an auditor, you need to hold COP. Yeah, that clear? Shall I move it? Okay. So who is qualified to become auditor of company? Chartered accountant within the meaning of Chartered Accountants Act 1949, and as per Chartered Accountants Act 1949, you should hold COP. Now, firm. This was talking about individual. This was talking about what? Individual. Firm. We can appoint a firm as auditor provided majority of the partners of the firm are qualified for appointment. Majority of the partners of the firm are qualified for appointment means majority should be chartered accountant holding COP. Majority should be chartered accountant holding COP. The firm where majority of the partners are qualified for appointment may be appointed by its firm name. A firm where majority of the partners, now what do we mean by the word majority? Majority will be greater than 50, not exactly 50. Greater than 50%. Majority of the partners are qualified for appointment, may be appointed by what name? Firm name. If majority of partners are chartered accountant holding COP, we can appoint a firm as our auditor. Now see, the word is clearly written, firm. Either you appoint an individual, this was basically for individual, or the second word is what? Firm. Either your auditor can be individual who is a chartered accountant holding COP, or it can be a firm where majority of the partners are chartered accountant holding COP. Sir, what about remaining partners? Can they be other than chartered accountant? They say majority should be qualified for appointment. Majority should be chartered accountant holding COP. Sir, can remaining partners be company secretary, CWA, advocates? Fine. Yes, it's fine. Remaining partners can be anything over here. But when I'll go to professional ethics, when I'll go to what? Professional ethics, you will find out that remaining partners cannot be anyone. They have given few people with whom we can be a partners. When we go to professional ethics, they have given we can be partners only with few categories of people. We cannot be partner with anyone. So there's a BCom guy, he's my partner. Okay, no. Your professional ethics doesn't allow. Companies Act is silent. Companies Act says we can appoint a firm as auditor when majority of the partners are qualified for appointment as an auditor. But who can be the other partners with whom we can enter into partnership? With whom we can enter into partnership, that is given under your professional ethics. Clear with this? When we go to professional ethics, I'll link with this. Okay. So either appointment can be done in individual name or it can be firm name. Now suppose a firm is appointed as auditor. Who is appointed? Firm. Suppose a firm is appointed as an auditor. Now, in a firm, there are three partners. A, B, C. A and B are chartered accountant holding COP. C is a company secretary. A and B are chartered accountant holding COP. C is a company secretary. Okay, can we appoint in firm's name first of all? There is a firm named as ABC and Company. A and B are chartered accountant holding COP. C is a company secretary. Can we appoint in firm's name? Yes, because majority are chartered accountant holding COP. We can appoint in firm's name. Now question is, on behalf of firm, when we sign the audit report, on behalf of firm, when the audit report is to be signed, question is whether all partners will sign or any one of the partner will sign on behalf of firm. When you sign an audit report, whether all partners sign or one of the partner will sign on behalf of firm. Okay, so any one of the partner on behalf of firm will sign, but the partner who is signing has to be chartered accountant. Now, when they use the word chartered accountant, when Companies Act use the word chartered accountant, it is what? Within the meaning of Chartered Accountants Act 1949, and Chartered Accountants Act 1949 says you should hold COP. So actually signature can be done by a partner who is a chartered accountant holding COP. Now they will not write COP. They will just write what? Chartered accountant. But when you go to definition of the word chartered accountant under Companies Act section 2 mein all definitions are there. Under the definition of the word what? Chartered accountant, they've written it is within the meaning of Chartered Accountants Act 1949, and as per Chartered Accountants Act 1949, you should hold a COP. So if firm is appointed as auditor, who are authorized to act and sign? If a firm is appointed as auditor, so who are authorized to act and sign? Chartered accountants. Only the partners who are chartered accountant that will be holding COP. Okay, so when firm is appointed, If you just check the word, when a firm is appointed, only the partner who are chartered accountants shall be authorized to act and sign. Only the partners who are chartered accountants shall be authorized to act and sign. And when they use the word chartered accountant, it's always within the meaning of Chartered Accountants Act 1949. Okay, so this was qualification. This was qualification. Either we can appoint an individual who is a chartered accountant holding COP, or we can appoint a firm where majority of the partners are qualified for appointment. Means majority of partners should be chartered accountant holding COP. And when a firm is appointed, who are authorized to act and sign? Only the chartered accountant. Only the partners who are chartered accountants, that is, who should be holding COP. The reason when they use word chartered accountant, it's within the meaning of Chartered Accountants Act 1949. Now, either individual or firm, they don't allow a company to become an auditor of another company. It's either an individual or a firm. Firm will also include LLP. So can a chartered accountants form a LLP and do the audits of company? Can a chartered accountants form an LLP and do the audits of the company? Yes. But can a chartered accountant form a company and do the audit of other companies? No. If you just go to disqualification, the first disqualification is body corporate. Either individual or firm, you can't form a company to do the audit of other companies. I'll come to the disqualification part. Now, there are some questions given over here. Preksha, a member of ICI, does not hold a certificate of practice. Is her appointment as an auditor valid? Can I appoint Preksha as auditor? No. Why? She does not hold a COP. The answer is not valid. Why not valid? We already highlighted. Now, suppose this type of question will not come, but suppose this type of question comes, it's how to write the answer. Whenever a question is there, you need to explain the full provision first. You start with as per section 141 subsection 1, and then you explain what was the qualification provision fully. And after you explain the qualification provision, then you come to a second para correlating the question. In the current question, Preksha, a member of ICI, does not hold COP. And then the concluding paragraph, as she does not hold COP, the appointment of Preksha is not valid. Any answer which is there, have a provision paragraph, correlating paragraph, and concluding paragraph. Okay, second question. State whether appointment can be made in the name of firm. State whether appointment can be made in the name of firm. They're asking whether appointment can be made in the name of firm. Okay, A and B are CA in practice, but C does not hold COP. A and B are CA in practice, C does not hold COP. Out of 3 partners, 2 hold COP. All 3 are CA. 2 hold COP, 1 doesn't hold. But still, can I say majority are chartered accountant holding COP? The answer is yes for the first one. Let us see second one. Partner A and B are CA in practice. C is a company secretary. A and B are CA in practice. Majority are chartered accountant holding COP. C is a company secretary. It doesn't matter what the third partner is. Whether he is a CA, whether he is a company secretary or CWA or advocate, it doesn't matter. So in both the case, majority of partners are chartered accountant holding COP. The answer is yes for both cases, as majority of partners are chartered accountants holding COP. Now when you write an answer, don't write majority of partners are chartered accountant holding COP. The wordings to be written should be majority of partners are qualified for appointment as a auditor. Because they use the word what? When should I appoint firm as auditor? When majority of partners are qualified for appointment. They are not telling majority of partners are CA holding COP. They are telling majority of partners are qualified for appointment. And when a person is qualified for appointment, when he's a chartered accountant holding COP. So write that line and then you explain this line. Okay, the yes for both the cases as majority of partners are chartered accountant holding COP. Shall I move it? Okay, this was the word qualification under 141 subsection 1 and 2. Now I go to disqualification subsection 3 and 4. Now, tick disqualification is important. Always there will be one question coming from disqualification. Always there will be one question coming from disqualification. Now, disqualifications of auditor. Actually, there are two things, 141 subsection 3, 141 subsection 4. First, we are doing 141 subsection 3. Who is disqualified to be an auditor of a company? This is as per Companies Act. Now, who is disqualified to be auditor as per Income Tax Act, tax audit? Uske liye, there is a provision given under Income Tax Act. We have tax audit also in our syllabus. We have a tax audit also in our syllabus. We have GST audit also in our syllabus. But that will come up in part 2. When I come to part 2, we have tax audit, we have GST audit. So who is qualified to be auditor as per your Income Tax Act? We'll learn at that time. This is only as per your Companies Act. This is whenever the audit is done as per your Companies Act, which is applicable for all companies mandatorily. Okay. First, they are telling a body corporate. Who is disqualified? A body corporate other than an LLP. Okay, question. What do you mean by the word body corporate? Don't tell me company. Company is a body corporate, fine. But what do you mean by the word body corporate? Anything which is an artificial legal entity, they are body corporates. Who is a body corporate? Artificial legal entity. Now, why have they disqualified the body corporates? Why have they disqualified the body corporates? Now, body corporates are artificial legal entity. Now, they say that if chartered accountant does something wrong, if an auditor does something wrong, they should also be liable for penalties. And we should be imprisoning the chartered accountant as well. If chartered accountant does something wrong knowingly, he should also go in jail. Now tell me, if it is an artificial legal person, how to send it in jail? That's not possible. Now someone said, sir, but we have our provisions of lifting of corporate veil and all that in law. They say we don't want to go into legalities. We want a simple thing. Then the case will go on. Lifting is there, not there. We don't want that. Simple, they say, all forms of body corporate, artificial legal entities are not allowed to be audited because there's a problem in penalizing them. How to put them in jail becomes difficult, and then whether lifting of corporate veil happens, doesn't happen, well, all that legalities will involve. To have a simplified version, they have disqualified them. Now question, LLP. Is LLP a body corporate? Understood my question? Is LLP a body corporate? Okay, chalo, leave LLP. Normal partnership. Is normal partnership firm, Partnership Act 1932, incorporated under that. Is it a artificial legal entity? Does it have a separate legal existence? In your intermediate, you had a difference between partnership and a company. Partnership does not have a separate legal existence. Company has a separate legal existence. A normal partnership is not a body corporate. It does not have separate legal existence. It's always known by its partners. Company has a separate legal existence. What about LLP? Whether LLP has a separate legal existence. Question, whether LLP has a separate legal existence. Okay, as per LLP Act 2008, LLP has a separate legal existence. LLP has a separate legal existence. So can I say LLP is also body corporate? Yeah, the body corporate is nothing but what? That is your artificial legal entity. It's an artificial legal entity. Now, LLP Act says LLP is also a separate legal entity. If LLP is a separate legal entity, LLP also falls under the word body corporate. Now, all forms of body corporate are what? Disqualified. But see the line. Other than LLP. The LLP is a body corporate, but specifically excluded from disqualification. LLP is a body corporate, but it is specifically excluded from what? Disqualification. So, can chartered accountant form LLP? Yes. So now question is, sir, now won't there be a problem of penalizing? You said they are disqualifying body corporate so that we don't have a problem of penalizing. LLP is a body corporate, but you are allowing them because you are telling all body corporates are disqualified other than LLP. The LLP are not disqualified. LLP are not disqualified. Won't the problem of penalizing will come? Okay, under LLP Act, partners have which liability? Under LLP Act, partners have which liability? Okay, is there any case where they have unlimited liability under LLP Act? Okay, LLP may partners have limited liability. Is there any provisions where partners have unlimited liability? Answer is yes. Under LLP Act, there is one provision telling if partners do something knowingly or willfully, if partners do something wrong knowingly or willfully, they will not have a limited liability, they will have a unlimited liability. So if they do something wrong knowingly, willfully, they have unlimited liability, we can put them in jail. The problem of penalizing will not come. LLP is a body corporate, but it is specifically excluded from disqualification. Reason is there's one provision under your LLP Act telling that if partners do something wrong knowingly, willfully, then they will not have a limited liability, they will have a unlimited liability. Now do one thing, write down at the top. You have a space at the top? Just write down at the top. See, always try to connect it. Like suppose I'm telling about this, so you can just put a kind of connector. LLPs are body corporate. LLPs are body corporate. But they are specifically excluded. They are body corporate, but they are specifically excluded from disqualification. They are specifically excluded from disqualification. Full stop. Therefore, chartered accountants can form LLP. Chartered accountants can form LLP. Okay, body corporate is disqualified. The chartered accountants cannot form a company. They need to have what? Firm. LLP is fine. They can form LLP. Now question, have you seen any chartered accountant forming company? Have you seen any chartered accountants forming company? Any of your firm having a company also? You're working in a firm. Okay. Do you know that they also have a company or something like that? Yes. Okay. What's the name of your firm where you're working? Vishnu. And which is the company which they have created? VD? Okay. Now for what purpose company is created? Accounting services. Okay. Now see, body corporate is disqualified to become what? Auditor. Body corporate is disqualified to become what? Auditor. Okay, for providing accountancy services, can I form a company? I'm not doing audit, I'm providing accountancy service. Is it fine? Yes. All the big four, they have a firm also, they also have a company. All the big four have a firm also, they also have a company. For doing audit, they form firm. For providing consultancies, on mergers and acquisition, application of Ind AS, whatever. For providing consultancy, they have a company. For doing audit, they have a firm, but for providing consultancies, they have a company. So write down one more point at the top. Chartered accountants, chartered accountants do form company. Chartered accountants do form company for providing consultancy services. They do form company for providing consultancy services, but not for doing audits. But not for doing audits. So do they form companies? Yeah, practically yes. All big fours, they have a company. Like when I was in Deloitte, they had a firm named as Deloitte Haskins and Sales. DHS is the firm name, Deloitte Haskins and Sales, and they had a company named as DTT Private Limited. Deloitte Touch to Mass Private Limited. DTT Private Limited was for providing consultancies. Okay, this was your first disqualification. Body corporates are disqualified. The reason is how to penalize them. LLP is a body corporate, but it's specifically excluded from disqualification. The reason is LLP Act says if the partners do something wrong, knowingly, willfully, they will not have a limited liability, they will have a unlimited liability. Shall I move it? Okay, second disqualification, officer or employee of the company. Officer or employee of the company, he is disqualified only for that company. He is disqualified what? Only for that company. Just write in bracket, only for that company, not its group companies. You are disqualified only for that company, not its group companies. Officer or employee of the company. Officer or employee. Okay, first word, employee. Employee is simple. We have an employer-employee relationship. When you are in employment with someone, you are employee. Okay, word officer. Again, who provide consultancy? No, that's not an officer. If I provide consultancy, I'm not an officer of the company. You say officer of the company. Who authorizes board of directors? See, I'm talking about officer of the company. Part of the top management. Okay, part of top management. That's actually kind of said is correct. There is a definition given. Now see, if you just check it out, student asked me the word, what is officer? The definition I've given. But that is not to be remembered. Exam, they will not ask you, oh, this is officer or not. But that is just for understanding, better understanding things are given. So who is covered under the word officer? All directors, all your directors. Executive, non-executive, whole-time, part-time, independent, whatever name you say. All directors are covered under your word officer. Plus, it will also include your manager. Now, what is a manager? Sir, sales manager, purchase manager, marketing manager. Is that a manager? No. As per Companies Act, we can have only one manager in a company. You've done a chapter of managerial remuneration in intermediate. And remember, manager, there can be only one. And that you have to register his name with ROC. It's similar to kind of managing director. So it will include all your directors, it will include your manager, it will also include your key managerial person, KMP. Now sir, what comes under KMP? CEO, Chief Executive Officer, CFO, Chief Finance Officer, Company Secretary of the company. Company Secretary of the company. Now, if your paid up capital exceeds a limit, you need to mandatorily have a company secretary. If your paid up capital exceeds a limit, you need to mandatorily have what? A company secretary who is called as a compliance officer of the company. Who is called as compliance officer of the company. That is also covered under the word KMP. So your officer includes all your directors, part-time, whole-time, executive, non-executive, whatever name you say, all types of directors. There are some directors who just come and attend board meeting. We call them as non-executive directors, or sometimes we call it as independent directors. So they come only for board meeting. They are not basically in company every day. They just come whenever there is a board meeting. They are also covered under the word officer. Now I tell you, under bank there is a rule. In all bank there is a rule. You need to have one chartered accountant director. In all banks, as per your Banking Regulation Act, you need to have what? One chartered accountant director. They don't need executive. It can be a non-executive, but all banks need one chartered accountant director. So imagine I am a chartered accountant and I am a director in a bank. I am a chartered accountant, I am a director in a bank. Question, I just go and attend board meeting. Would I be considered as officer of that bank? I am a chartered accountant. As such, I am in practice. But I am a director in that bank. Would I be considered as officer of that bank? Yes. If I am an officer of that bank, I cannot do audit of that bank. If I am an officer of that bank, I cannot do audit of that bank. Officer or employee of the company is disqualified only for that company. Okay, can I do audit of subsidiary company of that bank? Yes. I am disqualified only for that company, not group companies. If I am an officer of A Limited, I am disqualified only in A. I can be auditor in its holding company. I can be auditor in its subsidiary. I am disqualified only in that company. Clear with this? The word officer, the word employee. So if you are an employee somewhere, part-time, full-time, doesn't matter. If you are an employee somewhere, you are disqualified in that company. Now, actually, I tell you, यहाँ पे they use the word, if you are an employee, I'm just talking about employee. If you are an employee, you are disqualified only for that company. But when I go to Chartered Accountants Act, they say that if you are an employee somewhere, part-time, whole-time, then you cannot practice only. This is as per not Companies Act, that is as per what? Chartered. Here they say you are disqualified only for that company. As per Companies Act, imagine if I'm a part-time employee, part-time I work in A Limited, part-time I do my practice. Part-time I work in A Limited, part-time I do my practice. So according to them, I am disqualified only in A. According to them, I am disqualified to be auditor only in A. All other companies I can become auditor. But when I go to Chartered Accountants Act, they will disqualify me everywhere. They will not disqualify me only in A Limited. They will disqualify me in everywhere. Okay, do one thing at the end. You have a space? Write down a line. At the end, just write down a line. As per Chartered Accountants Act, comma, as per Chartered Accountants Act, comma, CA who is in part-time employment is disqualified or is not allowed anything, is disqualified from doing attestation function. What do you mean by attestation function? Signing. You're disqualified from doing attestation function. Subject to exceptions. There are few exceptions given. Like if you can do teaching. So few exceptions are there which we'll learn in basically Chartered Accountant. Subject to few exceptions. Okay, as per Chartered Accountants Act, if I am in part-time practice, if I am a part-time employee, I am not allowed to do attestation function. Companies Act says I am disqualified only for that company. But your Chartered Accountant Act doesn't allow you to sign anywhere. Clear with this? Okay. The officer, now I tell you, if question is asked, answer as per Companies Act. I should answer only as per Companies. Now you can write extra one line at the end. But don't say disqualified. Companies Act mein you are disqualified only for that company. Can you become an auditor in other companies? Yes. Okay, now see there is some illustration given to you. Illustration number 3. Whether a former employee can be appointed as auditor of company. Who is disqualified? Officer or employee? Okay, you should be currently employee or past? Current. Okay, so I was working in A Limited. I resign. And I start my practice now. I was working in A Limited. I resign and now I start my practice. Can I do the audit of A Limited? Other companies, so okay, I can do. Can I do audit of A Limited also? I was working in A Limited. I resign. Now I am not working in A. I left A. I start my practice. Can I do the audit of A Limited? After some period. Now actually there was a cooling period of 2 years required earlier, which has now been removed. So पहले ICI said you were in touch with A Limited, now you start your practice. Immediately if you become auditor of A Limited, your independence will be affected. But now they understood, people have become more professional. And now the notification which they came up earlier, now they came out with another notification telling that there is no cooling period. There is no cooling period. So probably when you were in intermediate, you might have learned there's a cooling period of 2 years required. Actually now there is. Actually, it is removed in 2017. 2017 say that notification has been removed telling that now there is no cooling period required. I was working in A Limited, I resign. I start my practice. I am a CA. Now in practice, I can do audits of any company. Yeah. Am I an officer or employee anywhere as of now? No. I was an officer or employee earlier. That doesn't matter. So can I do audit of A Limited? Answer is yes. Anywhere, if you have a doubt, please stop me. Okay, so whether a former employee can be appointed as auditor, answer will be what? Yes. And if you just want, there is no cooling period. Just for your understanding, because many of you might have in mind, oh, there was a cooling period. There is no cooling period. You resign from that company, you start your practice, same company also, you can audit it next day also. Okay, G, a CA in practice is a non-executive director of which company? RST. The G is a non-executive director in RST. Whether G can be appointed as auditor in RST only. You are a non-executive director. You are a non-executive director in RST. Now, when you are a non-executive director, you fall under the word officer. You are officer of RST. You cannot be auditor of that company. The answer is no. As non-executive director would be what? Officer of company. So if you are an officer of that company, you are disqualified for that company, not the group companies. Okay, G, again, a CA in practice. G, a CA in practice, is a non-executive director in Z Limited, holding company of RST. Okay, so it is kind of this situation. There is Z Limited, and they have a subsidiary named as what? RST. Okay, where are you non-executive director? You are non-executive director where? Z. Okay, you are a non-executive director in Z. So you are an officer of Z. You are disqualified only in Z. Are you disqualified in RST? No, you are disqualified only in that company, not group companies. Okay, G, a CA in practice, is a non-executive director of Z Limited, holding company of RST. So you are disqualified only in Z. Question, whether G can be appointed as auditor of RST? Yes. He is disqualified only in the company where he is officer. That is Z Limited. Is disqualified only in the company where he is officer, that is Z Limited, and not its group companies. Okay, you're disqualified only in Z, not in RST. Shall I move it? Okay. So this was your point number B. Point number A was body corporate other than LLP. Point number B, officer or employee of the company. He is disqualified only for that company. Okay, now, third point. A person who is a partner or in employment, who is a partner or who is in employment with the officer or employee of the company. Okay, officer or employee disqualified. Who is disqualified? Officer, employee, their partner, their employees. Officer, employee disqualified, their partner. Partners of officer or employee. And employees of officer or employee. So person who is a partner or who is in employment. But if you see the word, kiska, who is a partner of, who is a partner of whom? Who is a partner or employee of what? Officer or employee. Officer, employee disqualified, their partners. Their partners and their employees are also disqualified. Now, just remember one thing. I told you qualifications are different, disqualifications are different. Qualification was general in nature. Disqualifications are specific. You are a CA holding COP, you are qualified. But if you are an officer of the company, for that company you become only for that company you become disqualified. Other places you are not disqualified. Qualifications are general, disqualifications are specific. Now, when one partner becomes disqualified, pay attention, when one partner becomes disqualified, the firm is also disqualified. One partner disqualified, firm disqualified. Don't apply वो majority वाला rule. Majority was for qualification. I told you qualifications are separate, disqualifications are separate. One partner disqualified, firm disqualified. Imagine one partner is officer of the company. One partner is what? Officer of the company. So can I say that partner disqualified? That partner disqualified, so firm disqualified. Now again, one partner disqualified, firm disqualified. I don't say remaining partners in individual capacity. I don't say what? Remaining partners in individual capacity. One partner disqualified, firm disqualified. I am not telling other partners in individual capacity. Other partners in individual capacity may be qualified, may not be qualified depending on provision. One partner disqualified, firm disqualified. Firm disqualified. Suppose, if you see there is a question given below, illustration 6, there is XYZ and company. What is the firm name? XYZ and company. Suppose XYZ and company is there. Now X is an employee of A Limited. X is an employee of A Limited. X is an employee of A Limited. Now can I say you are working in A Limited? So you are disqualified for A Limited. Now X is an employee of A Limited. X disqualified, firm disqualified. X disqualified, firm disqualified. I did not say Y and Z individually. X disqualified, firm disqualified. Y and Z individually may be qualified, may not be qualified depending on provision. Depending on provision. Now, point number B says officer or employee of the company is disqualified. Who is officer or employee? Check the question number 6. X is a full-time employee in A Limited. He is also a partner in XYZ and company chartered accountants. He is a full-time employee of A Limited and is also partner where? Okay. Now he is a full-time employee of A Limited. Can XYZ and company be appointed as auditor of A Limited? First of all, who is an employee in A Limited? X. X disqualified, firm disqualified. Okay. So point number B says officer or employee is disqualified. Who is officer or employee? X. Okay. X disqualified, firm disqualified. This is as per clause number B. But now if you go to clause C, what does clause C say? partner of officer or employee. Okay, who is the officer or employee? Who is officer or employee? Mr. X. Okay, who is the partner of X? Y and Z. Y and Z are disqualified not due to clause B, but due to clause C. If clause C was not there, then Y and Z would have been qualified. So I'm telling one partner disqualified, firm disqualified. I'm not telling individually remaining partners. Individually remaining partners may be still qualified. But in this question, X is officer or employee disqualified, the X disqualified, firm disqualified. Y and Z are becoming disqualified not due to clause B, they are becoming disqualified due to clause C. Clause C says partner or employee of officer or employee. The X is officer or employee. Who are the partners of X? Y and Z. They become disqualified not due to clause B but due to clause C. Okay, the first question. A point. Can XYZ and company be appointed as auditor? What should be the answer? Answer is no. Write down. When one partner is disqualified, comma, firm is disqualified. When one partner is disqualified, firm is disqualified. Okay. Other partners in their individual capacity may or may not be disqualified. They may or may not be disqualified depending upon what? Provision. They may or may not be disqualified depending upon provision. Now question is, can XYZ and company be appointed as auditor? Answer is no. As X is officer or employee, X disqualified, firm disqualified. Right over here, as CA Mr. X is an employee of A Limited, comma, CA Mr. X is disqualified, and so the firm XYZ and company is also disqualified. I just write in bracket, this is as per what clause? Clause B. When one partner disqualified, firm is disqualified. Other partners in the individual capacity may or may not be disqualified depending upon what? Provision. As CA Mr. X is an employee of A Limited, CA Mr. X is disqualified, and so the firm XYZ and company is also disqualified. This is as per clause B. Now, if you check second question, can CA Mr. Y in his individual capacity be appointed as auditor? Clause B disqualifies the person who is the officer or employee. Who is the officer or employee? X. X disqualified, firm disqualified. It doesn't disqualify Y and Z individually. But point C, what does point C say? A person who is a partner or employee of the officer or employee. Who was officer or employee? X. Who is a partner of X? Y and Z. Y and Z are disqualified due to clause number C. Okay, so Can Mr. Y be appointed as auditor? Answer will be what? No. As CA, Mr. Y is partner of CA, Mr. X, who is employee of company, comma, CA, Mr. Y will be disqualified as per which clause? C. So clause B disqualifies whom? Clause B disqualifies a person who is a officer or employee. And if person is disqualified, one of the partner, the firm also gets disqualified. Not the other partners individually. Not the other partners individually. Just one way. One partner disqualified, firm. Not the other partners individually. But here, clause number C. Clause number C says, if you are a partner or employee of the officer or employee, so you are also disqualified. So Y and Z are partners of officer or employee. So Y and Z are disqualified due to clause number C. Shall I move it? Yes or no? Okay. Now D point. Now going to point number D. A person who or his relative or partner. A person who or his relative or your partner, means you or your relative or your partner, holds any security in the company or its group. Now why do I say its group? The word written is company, its holding company, its subsidiary company, its associate company, and other subsidiaries of same holding company. Other subsidiaries of what? Same holding company. If you or your relative or your partner holds any security anywhere, you are disqualified. Like for example, okay, suppose there is a company named as A Limited. Okay, they have a holding company AA Limited. They have a holding company named as what? AA Limited. And A Limited has a subsidiary. Okay, I say two subsidiaries named as X Limited, Y Limited. And your AA Limited, which was the holding company, they also have other subsidiaries. Suppose B Limited, no need to write, just pay attention. And C Limited. Okay, if we are talking about A Limited, we are talking about which company? A. We are talking about A Limited. We are proposed to become auditor of A Limited. Okay, if you or your relative or your partner, holds any security in the company. Okay, what is the meaning of the word company? In this example, what is the company? A Limited. You are disqualified. Or its subsidiary company. Which is a subsidiary of A Limited? X and Y. If you, your relative or your partner holds any security in X and Y, also disqualified. Okay, or its holding. Which is the holding? AA Limited. Or its associate. Now actually there is no associate over here. Associate is a company where we have a significant influence. Subsidiary is a company where we have a control. Subsidiary is a company where we have a control. Associate is a company where we have a significant influence. Significant influence comes when you hold more than 20%. So there is no associate over here. What are B and C? What are B and C? They are other subsidiaries of same holding. They are other subsidiaries of same holding. So now if me or my relative or my partner holds any security in the entire group, I will become disqualified. This is again to maintain independence. Officer, employee not allowed. Why? Just to maintain independence. Otherwise what happens? Imagine I am an employee of the company and I am only the auditor. Now, if I write something bad, they will remove me from my job. So they say don't write anything bad. So I can't write the things in a proper manner. So this is just to avoid independence issue. Same. Imagine if I only hold the shares. If I write or report anything bad about company, share price will go down. If share price goes down, can I say I only will suffer loss? But if I am a very huge shareholder of the company, I'll not report the bad things, and so that the share price is sustained. So this is just to maintain independence. They're telling you or your relative or your partner should not hold any security in the company or its group. Now question, relative. Relative means what? Who is covered under the word relative? Now again, they will never ask a question whether this guy falls under relative or not. But as a student, we generally think, oh sir, who is covered under the word relative? Now relatives definition in Companies Act only at 5 different places, they are different. Income tax may be a gift provision, may the word relative is explained separately. Everywhere the relative definition comes different. What is the definition of relative given here? If we just go down, note. In that note you will find out as per section 2 bracket 77 the relative means. It's given just for your understanding, not to be remembered, this definition. Officer ka definition, this relatives definition, these are just for your understanding. So who is a relative? Who is a relative? Now if it is a HUF, all the members of HUF are basically the relatives. Husband and wife, they are relatives, and any person as may be prescribed. Prescribed is the list given below. Okay, the simple words till now, husband and wife came. Husband and wife are relative, yeah. Okay, then they are telling father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter. Father, mother, wife already came. So father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, son's wife, daughter's husband. Son's wife, daughter's husband. This is basically the definition of the word relative. It's kind of your family only, not extending to your grandparents, not going down to your grandchildren. It's not grandchildren and grandparents, it's only your family. You, your wife, your father, your mother, your brother, sister, son, daughter, son's wife, daughter's husband. But now people are habituated to marry more than once. So they include steps everywhere. So stepfather, stepmother, stepdaughter, stepsister, stepson. That all is basically steps are also included. So this is a definition of the word relative. Now I got a doubt. Now this is what I have basically put in, which is given under your Companies Act. If you just see one thing, in your daughter, you don't find stepdaughter. Son ke andar likha hai, including stepson. But in daughter, you will not find stepdaughter. So I got a doubt, sir, stepdaughters are included or not? I tell you, don't go in that much detail. For example, purpose, now that word stepdaughter is not written, what should I do? Legally, as of today, the provisions are daughter and sons are having equal rights. So according to me, stepdaughter should also be included. In future, amendment will come in Companies Act and stepdaughter will be included. Today, what will happen? We have to go to a court of law. So, sir, should I include stepdaughter? Answer is yes. Okay, so this is the word relative. Now question, you, your relative, your partner should not hold any security in the company or group. Fine. They've given one exception. Relative can hold up to a face value not exceeding 1 lakh. Relative can hold up to a face value not exceeding what? 1 lakh. So if you, your relative or your partner is holding any security, what do you mean by word any security? It can be anything. Shares, debentures, anything. It is shares or debentures. Now the word written any security or interest. What is the meaning of the word interest? You should not be holding any security or interest in the company. What is interest? You're just interpreting. Interest. Now, can there be a company without share capital? Yeah, company limited by guarantee. Under company limited by guarantee, we don't have security, we'll have a interest. The word interest is written in order to cover those companies which are not having share capital. The word interest, this is to cover those companies which are not having share capital. So in that companies, I'm not having a security but having a interest. If I have an interest in that company, I cannot be the auditor. You, your relative or your partner, should not hold any security or interest in the company or subsidiary, holding, associate or other subsidiaries of same holding. Subsidiary is something where we have a control. Subsidiary is something where we have a control when we hold more than, how many percent? 50%. Okay, associate. Associate is something where we have not control, we have what? Significant influence. We have significant influence. When does it come? When we hold more than 20%. Okay. Yes, please. Question, sir. Does security include options and futures? Definitely yes. I can't hold futures and options of that company as well. No, that is also not allowed. That is covered under the word security. It will also include right to receive the shares as well. ESOPs, options, stock options also will be included under the word security. Security doesn't mean shares now. You have a right to receive share. That is also a security. Futures option is also security. Okay, you, your relative or your partner should not be holding any security or interest in the company, or I just name it as group. I just don't name subsidiary, associate, holding, other subsidiaries of same holding. I just name it as group. Relative can hold up to a face value of 1 lakh. Now question, sir, that 1 lakh limit, is it per relative or all relatives together? My father holds face value 1 lakh, my brother holds face value 1 lakh, my sister holds face value 1 lakh. Is it per relative or all relatives together? Is it per relative or all relatives together? You're done now. Okay, now it will be all relatives together. It's not per relative, all relatives together. Okay, so relative may hold security or interest of face value not exceeding 1 lakh. The word is what? Face value. And it's only the relative. And this will have all relatives together. All relatives together. It is face value. Market value can be crores of rupees. Like Reliance Industries Limited, face value is 10. Market price approximately 1500. So imagine face value 10. So my relative can hold up to 10,000 shares. 10,000 shares, face value is 10. So face value will become what? 1 lakh. Market price will become 15 crores. It doesn't matter market price. They can hold up to a face value 1 lakh. And it's only relative. I cannot hold a single rupee. My partners cannot hold a single rupee. My relative can hold up to 1 lakh. You or your partners cannot hold anything. It's only the relative. So simple words they have written over here. In short, the person is disqualified if he or his partner holds any security and his relative is holding security of face value exceeding 1 lakh. You or your partner holds anything, you are disqualified. Now, there's one small discrepancy actually in Act. The word written is, your relative can hold face value not exceeding 1 lakh in the company. What's the word written? In the company. Now, in the company word is written, so some people interpret, you can hold, relative can hold only in company. Relative cannot hold in subsidiary, holding, associate. They say only in the company. So many people interpret that relative can hold only in main company. They cannot hold in other places. Now just tell me one thing. Where is the independence more affected? If my relative holds shares of that company, independence is more affected, or if my relative holds shares of some subsidiary, associate, the independence is more affected? Where my independence is more affected? If I hold shares of that company, independence is affected, or some blah 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 nearby companies if I hold that company? Now tell me, if you allow me to hold in that company, then what's the problem to allow me to hold in subsidiary? So according to me, interpretation should be not in that company, but relative is allowed to hold up to face value 1 lakh in all companies together. That company or group companies, all companies together, it should not exceed 1 lakh. Now I've given that as a note, what they have written. So I have removed the word in the company. I have removed that word in the company. According to me, he can hold face value 1 lakh in the entire group together. All relatives together, entire group, it should not exceed 1 lakh. Okay, now see the note. The word written in provision. The word written in provision is relative may hold security or interest in the company of face value not exceeding 1 lakh. But according to me, if relative is allowed to hold security in the company itself, then he should definitely be allowed to hold the security in group companies as well. So according to me, it is 1 lakh limit, not only for that company, but for the entire group. Relative can hold up to 1 lakh in the entire group, but it is all relatives together. Now, question. Imagine my father is holding shares in a company, face value 60,000. My father is holding shares in the company, face value what? Allowed, not allowed? Allowed, no? Up to 1 lakh. Now the thing is, company came out with a bonus issue. Company came out with bonus issue 1:1. Okay, so my father was holding a face value 60,000. Can I say 6,000 shares of 10 each? Okay, he got another 6,000 shares of 10 each by way of bonus. Okay, so now he's holding 12,000 shares of 10 each. Now question, whenever a bonus shares are issued, whether the face value goes down, whenever the bonus shares are given, whether the face value will go down. What will go down? Market value. Whenever bonus shares are given to the shareholders, actually there is nothing given to shareholder. Shareholders are not benefited. Suppose bonus is 1:1, market may, the price will become half. Market price, not face value. Market price is always adjusted in proportion to the bonus ratio. Reason is company is earning some amount. That earnings is remaining same. Bonus may company doesn't get anything. The assets, liabilities of company will remain same. So imagine net assets of company is same. If net assets of company is same, the total valuation of company is same. But now number of shares doubled. If number of shares doubled, the per share value will become half. So whenever bonus comes, what falls? Market price proportionately. If bonus is 1:1, market price will become half. Face value will remain same. My father had a face value 6,000 shares of 10 each. It was 60,000. Now 12,000 shares of 10 each. It becomes okay. Now my father holds face value more than 1 lakh. Am I disqualified? Company gave bonus. I became disqualified. Am I disqualified now? Okay. They give you 60 days for corrective action. So when your relatives holding exceed the face value 1 lakh, how many days are given? 60 days are given for corrective action. You don't become disqualified immediately. If within 60 days your father sells off the extra holding, then it is fine. Otherwise you will become disqualified after 60 days. If relatives holding exceed 1 lakh, then 60 days are given for corrective action. So see, if the relative acquires any security above the prescribed threshold, the corrective action shall be taken by the auditor within 60 days of such acquisition. Within 60 days of such acquisition. Okay, relative ka face value exceeded 1 lakh, within 60 days corrective action should be taken. Now question, my partner bought the shares of the company where I was an auditor. I was an auditor in my individual capacity. Who bought the shares? Partner. Partner bought the shares, but upon knowing that if he buys the shares, I will become disqualified. Because your relative, your partner should not hold any security. My partner bought the shares of company, but upon knowing that, oh, I was an auditor, he sold off the share within 60 days. He sold off the shares within 60 days. Would I be disqualified? I repeat, my partner bought the shares of the company, but upon understanding, oh, I will get disqualified, he sold it off within 60 days. Would I be disqualified? Corrective action 60 days is only when relatives holding exceed 1 lakh. You or your partner bought a single share, there is no corrective action ka window. Corrective action window is only when relative is exceeding 1 lakh. Corrective action is not for partner buying the share and selling it off within 60 days. It's only for relative. Clear with this? Shall I move it? Okay. 60 days from that acquisition. So if bonus was there, the bonus shares are allotted to me, tab se. Okay, now if you see, the limit of 1 lakh is applicable when it is held by relative, not by you or your partner. In same way, the grace days of 60 days for corrective action shall apply only with respect to securities held by relative. This will not apply to auditor or his partner. You buy it off and then you sell within 60 days? No. Your partner bought and sold within 60 days? No. I buy or my partner buy, same day I get disqualified. After he sells it off, but the thing is, when you bought at that time only you became disqualified. And when you become disqualified, you are deemed to have vacated your place of office as an auditor. You are deemed to have vacated your place of office as auditor, you are gone. And once you are gone, company needs a new auditor. Once you are gone, company needs a new auditor. It's a casual vacancy, and the casual vacancy has to be filled within 30 days. The day when you acquired a shares, you are gone. Now company will appoint a new auditor within 30 days. Now, sir, I sold it off. Can they appoint me only? No. I sold it off. Can they appoint me only? No. Clear with this? Okay, this was basically the thing. Now just see. Many things I mark. Like yahan pe you might be seeing, oh, many things are marked. But then below I go, this definition full, it's not important. I just left it off. So it's kind of half of the things is underlined, which you read will give you the crux of everything. It's not only words marked, many full sentences are also marked, which helps you to understand how do we write it. Okay, this was your D point. Under that, first. Under D point, there are three things. First one was you, your relative, your partner should not hold any security in the company or its group. Now coming to the next one, you, your relative, your partner, that's common. We just say D point, you, your relative, your partner. Then comes 1, then comes 2, then comes 3. You, your relative, your partner is common. Now you, your relative, your partner is indebted to the company or group. Same. Group is subsidiary, holding, associate, other subsidiaries of same holding. You, your relative, your partner is indebted to the company or group for amount exceeding 5 lakh. Again, this is for independence. Imagine, I have taken a loan from company. I have taken a loan from company. Can I say I'm indebted to the company? What do you mean by indebted? Liable to pay. It's liable to pay. If something is your liability, you are indebted. So, if I have taken a loan from company and I am their auditor, now if I write something bad about the company, they will ask me to repay the loan. If I write something bad, what they will say? Give back our money. Give back the loan. Now, I don't have money to give it back. So I say, sir, I don't have money. So don't write. So now, something bad about company was there, but if I write something bad, they will ask me to repay the loan. I don't have money to repay as of now. That's why I don't report that bad things. So just to avoid all that things, this all are inserted. You, your relative, or your partner is indebted to the company or group for amount exceeding 5 lakhs. Okay, so it is basically you are indebted to the company. This is all group. In excess of rupees 5 lakh. Now it's you, your relative or your partner. Question, sir, I am indebted for 2 lakh. My relative indebted for 2 lakh. My partner indebted for 2 lakh. I am indebted 2 lakh. My relative indebted 2 lakh. My partner indebted 2 lakh. Chalega? Together, all, everything together. It is actually you plus all relatives plus all partners should not exceed 5 lakh. If it exceeds 5 lakh, you become disqualified. Okay, can company be indebted to the auditor? Yeah, company can be indebted to the auditor. Auditor should not be indebted to company. कहाँ से independence? One thing. I have money from you. I have to receive money from you. My independence is affected or your independence is affected? So my independence is not affected. I am above you. If I am below you, then my independence is affected. Okay, this was your B point. Now coming to D में the second one. Now D में third one. Now again, this act is kind of weird. At second and third point में there is figures में something mistake. But unless the act changes, we can't change it. Now what do they say in the third point? You, your relative or your partner, you or relative or your partner has given a guarantee or provided security. You or your relative or your partner has given what? Guarantee or provided security to the company or group for the debt of third person. You have given a guarantee or provided security to whom? Company or group for the debt of whom? Third person. For example, there is A Limited, the company. There is A Limited, the company. Now, A Limited has given a loan. A Limited has given a loan to, say, for example, Mr. B. He has given a loan to Mr. B. Now there is CA Mr. X, who has given a guarantee to the company that if Mr. B does not pay, I will pay it. Okay, so who has taken a loan? B. Okay, is chartered accountant taking loan? Have you taken loan? And B is just your friend. B is just your friend. He is not your relative, he is not your partner. You, your relative or your partner is not indebted. Who is indebted? Your friend. What's the name of your friend? B. B has taken a loan from A Limited. What you have done? You have given a guarantee. To whom? Company. A Limited is what? Company. For the debt of third person. So, if you, your relative or your partner has given a guarantee, you, your relative or partner has given a guarantee or provided security to the company in connection with indebtedness of whom? Third person. There is an indebtedness of third person and it is to whom? The company or the group. So you, your relative or your partner has given a guarantee to the company or its group for the indebtedness of third person for an amount exceeding 1 lakh. For an amount exceeding 1 lakh. Now see, here you are not indebted. Here you are not indebted. Your friend is indebted. You have just given a guarantee. If he doesn't pay, you have to pay. That's called indirect indebtedness. That is called as what? I am not indebted directly, but friend is indebted. If he doesn't pay, I have to pay. So B is the second one was direct indebtedness. Third one is indirect indebtedness. Now just tell me one thing. Just tell me one thing. I took a loan of 2 lakh. I took a loan of 2 lakh from the company. I took a loan of 2 lakh from the company. Am I qualified or disqualified? I took a loan from the company 2 lakh. I took a loan from company 2 lakh. Not disqualified. Why not disqualified? You, your relative or your partner can be indebted up to 5. You are disqualified if indebtedness exceeds 5 lakh. If I take a loan 2 lakh, not disqualified. Now imagine my friend took a loan, I just gave a guarantee. My friend took a loan 2 lakh, I gave a guarantee. Disqualified. Because guarantee is allowed only up to, it's very weird. I take a loan, not disqualified. Friend takes a loan, disqualified. The actually limit should be 1 lakh for direct indebtedness and 5 lakh for indirect. But they have given is 5 lakh for direct and 1 lakh for indirect. No, friend is not covered under relative. No, but I have given a guarantee, na? You, your relative or your partner has given a guarantee. You have given a guarantee or your relative has given a guarantee or your partner has given a guarantee to the company for the debt of some third person. Now, someone is basically indebted. I just gave a guarantee. Now, I am indebted, not disqualified. Friend is indebted, you are disqualifying. So that's kind of very weird. Limit should be actually in second point, it should be 1 lakh, and third point, it should be 5 lakh. But this is what it is. We have to follow what is given in Act. So I take a loan up to 5 lakh allowed. But my friend is taking a loan, I want to give a guarantee only up to 1 lakh is allowed. Yes or no? Okay, the very clear you should be, it is you are giving a guarantee to the company or group for the indebtedness of third person. For the indebtedness of what? Third person. Okay, this is basically your D point in excess of rupees 1 lakh. Okay, let us see some questions. Okay, we do one thing. We take a 5 minutes break and then we start. We take 5 minutes break, then we start again.